Revolution Radio. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates.
Hi, and welcome to Revelation here. With me, Paul Stevenson on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. And welcome. This is Friday, the 10th of November, 2017. I'm very glad to say it's a topic which is going to be appealing very much to the US audience, which would be the bulk of Revolution Radio's audience. Although, as I say, we have hosts all around the world, and with internet radio, we are 24/7 here, really, going around the world live. And but this is a very American topic. I have a gentleman called L.B Bork with us, and he is the founder of P.A.C, which is the People's Awareness Coalition. And he's written a book called the Red Ammendment, the book that will save the Republic. A lot of research gone into this. I think he's a lawyer by trade as well. And without further ado, are you with me, Mr. Bork?
Yes, I am, Paul. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Yourself, sir?
Yeah, okay. I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a jurist.
Oh, you're a jurist.
Study law. Yeah, that means I study law.
Okay, you study law. All right.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
What should I call you? Is what is LB short for, or what? How
it's Leonard Brett. I just use that as a movement handle for the movement. You know, a pen name, if you will.
I'll call you Leonard then.
No, well, you can if you'd like.
Well, whatever you prefer.
LB is what I go by, but that's
all right.
Fine.
Okay. Well, all right. Fine. All right. So, so you're the founder of the People's Awareness Coalition, and you've written this book, The Red Ammendment.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and
that was back in about 2000 or 1999 when I wrote the book. P.A.C was founded in 1998.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how is it all going with the organization?
It's pretty difficult because of all the operatives and opportunists out there. I don't know how it is over in the UK, but there's a lot of opportunists here in the United States. Egos and, narcissist types that take over the movement. And my mentor back in the early 90s, warned me about this. And I wanted not to believe it, but he was dead on about people stealing your research and twisting it around and using it as their own. So that's been the problem. And of course, there's the operatives.
Well,
the ADL, Southern Poverty Law Center, and whoever else can be, mingled into that mess.
Those wonderful organizations.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I mean, you have to, particularly any organization which is critical of jury, you can expect to be infiltrated. Which is pretty much any organization which even looks that direction will get infiltrated. But anyway, I was introduced to you by I think he's a friend of yours, Brian, on Facebook, who I interact with from time to time. He's a nice chap.
Yes.
And, so I said, yeah, let's get you on. I'll give you the floor. I won't do an Alex Jones and interrupt you every 2 seconds because it's really an opportunity for you just to really to tell the listeners what you're about and to sort of present what you're about and push the movement as much as you can. So I'll give you the floor. Just give us the background and what you've been doing and what you're trying to achieve.
Yes, thanks for mentioning Brian. He's been with us for about 6 years now, and he's been very loyal and dedicated to getting our message out. If we had more people like that on our side, we'd be getting further faster,
Sure, he seems like a nice chap for sure, yeah.
Yeah, he is a good guy, a young man. I don't know how old you are, but he's in his 30s.
Yeah, I'm 39.
Okay. Yeah, I'm getting old. I started this when I was about your age or a little younger, probably Brian's age, back in the early 90s. Like I said, you said I could kind of tell my story. Well, it started early as far as I'm concerned. When I was very young, Kennedy was assassinated, of course, in '63. I was only 4 years old. Didn't know much about what was going on then, but I knew it was a tragedy. And I didn't know at that time, of course, how tragic it was. And being a young person or young little lad is what they call them over in the UK, young men. I was concerned about the money, actually. I was in my grandma's money collection. She had a piggy bank full of silver and some dollar bills and $2 bills because they were unique at the time. And, being 3 or 4 years old at the time, you don't have much money that runs through your hands, and you didn't pay much attention. But, having looked at one of her $1 bills she had saved, I don't know if it was a specific kind. I got some $5 bills right now that are silver certificates and U.S. notes, which Kennedy released, which I believe was one of the reasons he got assassinated, because it cut out the Federal Reserve System. But anyway, I saw the creepy eye on the pyramid in the back, and I was thinking, what's this got to do with America? From what I knew, being that young, pyramids had to do with Egypt. Of course, I didn't know the depth of it then. So I think God was speaking to me because I thought it was very odd looking. But that was the start of the journey. I kind of shelved or couched everything until I we got probably into the 90s when I started looking at issues, and my friends and I went into Second Amendment issues because it seemed like they were being diminished by people like the Clinton administration, and they're trying to take the guns away. The Waco debacle, which were a bunch of people got murdered there by the government.
Yeah, they've certainly upped the ante on the attack on the Second Amendment in recent weeks.
Oh yeah, of course. These things are all staged. That are going on, these events, as you probably know. They had some incidents in the 70s, like I don't know the man's name in Texas who shot a bunch of people down in Texas from a tower at one of the universities. I don't know the details on the incident, but all these things are kind of promoted and used to take gun rights away. Of course, the 60s in America saw a lot of turmoil after the Kennedy Association getting the so-called Civil Rights Acts. That was the second bout. Of course, the first ones had taken place during the Civil War, which I'll get into a little later, and that's what my book centers on.
Who do you think did what do you think was behind the Las Vegas shooting? Just a side issue, briefly.
Oh, I don't know. I saw someone do some research and posted on Facebook that it had to deal with security systems and things, and there's a lot of money involved in the people that own that hotel, and something to that effect. I don't know the details. I really don't look at these. That's not my forte to look at these issues. I hope that People's Awareness Coalition would have formulated by now, after 20 years, into something that we were all working together, and you'd have different divisions investigating different things. But I tend to center on the law and getting people free from the system, so I don't have time to do everything. But that's what our interest is get people working together, and I'll get into that more as we go on here. But yeah, back to the 60s and the 70s. I couched that stuff, and a lot had taken place during that time to put the last nails in the coffin for the New World Order's agenda. And like I said, I couched it until I was probably in the 90s. And what really started to wake me up, I had a manufacturing business, and I got a letter from a representative. I think it was like probably 1988 or somewhere in that time period. And I kind of usually don't pay attention to those guys because I never voted. I always thought my whole life they were criminals, and everything was dishonest. So I just did my best to make a buck, as they say, and make a living. And
it's a daily temptation, isn't it? I mean, I was just thinking today exactly that. I was thinking, you know what, Do I need all this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's hard to live amongst it. I don't know how it is over there. I know probably you've seen more change over in the UK.
It's a total police state over here. I mean, you guys at least have the First Amendment. This place is probably, I would say, at least 5, 8, 10 years down the line of where they want to go to. I mean, we've got huge immigration here. We've got an Islamic problem over here with just the demographic there changes. Whites are a minority in London. You literally you can't open your mouth or you're a Nazi and a white supremacist. It is so aggressive. I mean, you have to be so careful here.
Mm-hmm. It's getting to that point here in the States.
Yeah, in fact, just as you know, there was someone contacted me recently for Renegade Radio. He wanted to interview me, so I'm going to be on the other side of the mic. And another guy I know who's involved in a sort of a right wing sort of movement over here. I just found out that one of the guys who's a radio host in Renegade Radio recently killed himself. Just been hounded, loss of income, just everything, and because he was calling out jury basically. Mm-hmm. And just destroyed his life. Yeah, he committed suicide. So, but anyway, sorry, I digress.
Yeah, I was just about to get into it. What really got me into this, and that letter from that congressman kind of piqued my interest because he said, I don't remember who the congressman was or what the letter exactly said verbatim, but it basically said your industry or your business is threatened by legislation that's being passed in Congress, and talked about. I don't know if it was being passed at the time, but my thought is later that it had happened to probably be the NAFTA and GATT treaties that Clinton signed later, right in the 90s, after they got him in office.
Sure.
So I say got him in office because that's all orchestrated. All these guys are groomed and placed to be put in the office so they can
absolutely
control things. Yeah. So I that's a guess, of course, but it's the timeline, and that's what I excuse me. That's what I depend on, timelines and chains of events that happen. It speaks volumes. I don't know if Brian, we gave you a paper called Liberalism and Statism. I don't know if you read it or not, but I did a 2,000-year timeline on that to see where the problems lie today. But anyway.
Yeah, there is. I mean, I've read most of it. There's a lot in there. I've sort of picked it up at the communism is mercantilism part, as I thought we could pick it up there rather than, because we just don't have time to go back into the ancient roots of it, but you can probably touch on it, and then we can get into this and some of the Red Ammendment stuff, the sort of the solution sort of stuff. It's
sure. Yeah, I just wondered if you read it, but you're absolutely right. It is mercantilism, and it's all grounded back to the Luciferian Jews.
Yeah.
So that's a no-brainer after you start looking at the details and connecting dots. So anyway, brings us up to the early 90s. I started talking with friends about the Second Amendment issues. That's what got me into this. Most people in this movement are greedy and don't want to pay their taxes, which you can't blame them because this whole system is corrupt and Marxist. But they go about it the wrong way. They're to not paying their taxes for the wrong reasons. And as I've seen the last 25 or more years, most of these people go to prison because they're doing it wrong and they're greedy. But anyway, we started talking about Second Amendment issues because that was my interest, because it was being threatened, especially during the Clinton administration, which got me into the law, and then I found out after I did my own research, after, so many years, I found a P.A.C, and I worked in this citizens research group office down in Phoenix, Arizona, and found out a lot of people are going to prison for their beliefs and thinking they had constitutional rights, So that's why they weren't paying their taxes.
Again, it's the same thing over here. It's a natural evolution where you start to study law. Because I'm doing exactly that, because people are increasingly ending up in court and having to, so you need to know as much as you can.
Well, I see. Let me say right now that I have no problem with the system to a point. It's the Roman civil law system, and through my research, it would work. The problem is they keep us ignorant, the citizens, whatever you want to call us, subjects, ignorant of law, and they keep it away from us to jerk us around. That's the problem.
Sure.
I mean, in a civilized or modern world, if you want to call it that, what are you going to do? These anarchy theories are just ridiculous. They think everyone's just going to walk the earth with no rules, really.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah. Well,
that's absurd to even think that. So,
well, they're a product of this, aren't they?
Oh, yeah, definitely. The anarchy group is planned opposition. They're a bunch of useful idiots.
Exactly, just unwitting pawns.
Yeah.
Citizens of nowhere, global socialist, whatever.
Yeah, they're all planned opposition. I've been fighting them for 3 years. We haven't gotten too far because I'm fighting all the planned opposition or operatives.
Well, yeah, because with this cultural Marxism, the stuff, they have a moral sort of foundation to their religion, like religions do, as they see it. So they see anybody in opposition not as misguided or someone to debate, but as evil, and evil people need to be annihilated. Really, that's how they see it.
Yeah.
So it's literally like those zombie movies. You see those zombie movies, you see, somebody gets bitten, a couple of days before they were your friend or your brother, but once they're bitten, there's no talking to these people. They're coming for you. And I think that's why they sort of do these zombie movies, because they like to tell you what's going on and through the popular culture, and I really think there's a parallel there, because they're
you're definitely right. No, getting up to PAC speed, I stopped listening to people because I saw these people going to prison, and of course people are like parrots. They mock parrot what they've heard from other people. And I started thinking, this isn't right. Something's wrong. So I started doing my own research, and that led me to founding PAC, and of course writing the Red Ammendment, which explains the whole system and what happened during the Civil War period of America. And we can go deeper into that. You said in your introduction that most of this centers on America, but I can tell you, or the United States, that just briefly looking at some of the other countries in the world, their law systems had changed during the 1850s. And that's when the declaration of war by the Jews, per the Communist Manifesto, is made on the world. A manifesto is a declaration of war.
Yeah.
And by a sovereign. And the Jews believe they're a sovereign group of people.
Well, they've got hegemony, basically, not just in the US, but it's been easier for them in Europe, really, because if you've got the Constitution, but to have some resistance to them. But again, you'll know more about American Constitution issues than I will,
Yeah. Well, they twisted that all around, and that's what the Red Amendment has to do. They started a new layer of law, or put another layer of law in place with the 14th Amendment. And one thing I discovered, early on, or when I was reading the thing back in like 1995, it says it's a crime to vote right in the Section 2 of the 14th Amendment. That's how they get people to rebel against the Constitution, and that's the trickery they're using to put people in prison and subdue them to law, this private law that they put in place. And that's basically the principle of what PAC stands on. And talking about infiltration, they've tried to infiltrate PAC, but they can't, because we have a solid mission statement. All they can do is put out more operatives and give us resistance, in different ways, through trashing us on the internet or Facebook, harassing us. The Russians seem to harass our forum quite a bit.
The Russians do?
Yeah.
Really?
I don't know if they're just busybodies or whatever, but they seem to like to plague our forum.
Why do you think that is?
They're part of it, you know. Another, I don't know if you know, brother. I'm getting off. We're kind of bouncing all over the place. Your brother Nathaniel, I don't trust him because he wears that Russian Orthodox garb. Mm. You know, and everything that ties back to the church, I don't trust.
What, the institutional church?
Yeah, the institutional church. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, so you've got so let's get down into the whole crux of the issue with this law thing, then, and break that down, and what they're trying to what is you're trying to expose and what they're trying to resist you and to stop you.
Well, they haven't done much because they can't. Because truth always, you know, the cream rises to the top. So we have the truth on our side. But as far as what I discovered, some people were touching upon it before I came on the scene, but I refined it a bit more. They gave us a way out with the Expatriation Act, is what they call it. It's called the Rights of Citizens and American Citizens and Foreign States. They put that act in place the day before they put the 14th Amendment on the books. I say put it on the books because it wasn't lawfully ratified. It was forced by gunpoint, so it's unlawful in that respect. So there's a way out, and I started making the parallels to the Communist Manifesto, what was going on, and you know, the timelines that corresponded with this, and what they were doing. You know, the language that we used. Of course, law language can be a bit different, and political language can be different than even law sometimes.
And of course, they're at quite an advanced stage now of this whole operation, aren't they?
Oh yeah, it's, you know, 150 years plus into the making as far as their advancement. You know, the one thing I tell people that you know, really, the world was inept until like 1800, when the so-called Industrial Revolution started to happen. And you know, I being a thinker and you know, or what do they call a critical thinker, I started looking at the difference between the North and the South, and the industrialization, which is generally, you know, mechanical means and machineries, and which Marx talked about in Das Kapital, and of course, you know, raged against in the Communist Manifesto, which he was just playing both sides of a coin there. He was building capitalism. That's what he was doing, using communism as the vehicle or the blueprint.
Well, it's an oxymoron. It's an oxymoron that you know, that a Jew should come up with Marxism in terms of the to be present themselves as interested in the worker.
Right.
You know.
Yeah. Well, you look at his history too. He's just not.
Well, he's an Eastern European rabbi straight out of the pit of hell, isn't he?
Sure. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, this whole thing was laid out and planned in the 1800s. So, like I said a few minutes ago, that if you look at all the countries in the world, their law systems changed within their government. Like in the UK, for example, it used to be run by the king or queen. They just did an overlay of this state law, or statism, as these people like to call it, agenda over the old system. And that's what they did in America too. But we had the state system established by the Constitution, or the Articles of Confederation was the foundation of it, actually. And it just merged or developed into the Constitution, which is just a stair-step effect, or a progressive. That's one of their terms, progressive. Everything they do is progressive. Mm. Because most people wouldn't put up with it, you know, they wouldn't accept it otherwise.
Yeah, what they call progression, I would tend to call regression, but anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Synagogue of Satan stuff.
Oh, total synagogue of Satan, yeah. Just the externalization of Talmudism.
Sure, exactly. So, if you go into your history in the 1800s, mid 1800s, you're going to see drastic changes in your law systems. Anyone in the world is going to see that. Of course, it took that Marx threatened that in the Communist Manifesto. He said, which is Declaration of War. He said these measures will be applied in all countries of the world, in various stages or whatever. He was talking about the planks. That's one thing that these idiots and stupid people in America don't see. They don't think we're communists because they don't call us communists. It's the name game or the word game with them. But all the planks are applied in America.
Oh yeah, if you control the language, you in no small part win the day. I mean, if rather than calling it toast, let's just call it warm bread.
Right. Exactly. So that's what they've done, and that's how they control the minds of people for the most part.
Mm. Well, we're going to break, I think, and about I think we should. The break will be in about a minute, I think, if I'm correct. Yeah, there we go. All right, LB, I'll see you back in about 3 minutes on the other side.
Sure. Thank you.
Hi, and welcome back to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com with me, Paul Stevenson, on this Friday, the 10th of November, 2017. I'm on Facebook at Paul Edward Stevenson. You can donate to Revolution Radio. We're 100% listener supported here. Just go to the homepage there. It's Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com and scroll down, and there is a donate option there. And if you want to donate to to my show here and you like the work I do, you can do that on PayPal. It's just my email, Stevenson_P5@sky.com. I am with L.B. Bork of the People's Awareness Coalition. You back with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So we've been jumping around a bit, but that's normal when we're just sort of educating here about what you're about and what's what you're doing. So where do you want to pick it up?
Well, we were talking about the 14th Amendment a bit, I guess, before we took break.
Yeah. We were talking about the 1800s, and then we're talking about the 14th Amendment. So let's just go into the 14th Amendment stuff then, and what they don't want us to know, and what the American people should know.
See, what they did is, I believe, of course, the Revolutionary War too. The Civil War was orchestrated. I believe a lot of the characters in the South were party to it, especially Master Mason, Albert Pike. He was from Massachusetts and was a general in the Southern Army. So, our forces during the Civil War, which is very fishy. And he's, had a statue in Washington, D.C. post-Civil War, being honored for serving the United States in the war, but he served in the South. So, if you look at the South or Confederates Constitution, it looks identical to the federal or U.S. Constitution, which is fishy because it's got a bunch of holes in it.
Right.
So I believe, just on a few points, the whole thing was orchestrated. Of course, doing deep archive research and proving that's kind of going to be impossible maybe at this point. There still is a lot of archive information available, but the more this stuff comes out, they'll probably destroy it. It's unfortunate that we haven't been able to organize to get things done quicker or sooner than we really needed to be done. Because, like you said a few minutes ago, Paul, we're at the 11th hour, so to speak.
Yeah, the foundations have been destroyed. I think I forget which scripture it says, but if the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? And the foundations are now destroyed, really.
Yeah, it's even hard to find biblical times, research, and of course, I generally preempt my discussions on shows such as this with a disclaimer of you have to speculate a lot. In other words, the law that I've written my book on that's evidenced. But as far as going back 2,000 years and taking a guess what transpired, it's very, very hard.
It gets more murky, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah. Yes.
And they deliberately do that, of course, as well.
Oh, sure.
Because they want to they don't want to leave too much of an obvious trail,
Well, I do believe Jesus existed, and he was a pain in the ass for them. And they, of course, the Bible is written after he was around. The church was formed after he was around. He didn't ask for that to be done.
Sure.
So all this is suspicious to me.
Well, he certainly was. He certainly was in opposition to them, and they hated him. So.
Oh, sure.
But yeah. So sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say during the Dark Ages, people kind of misconstrue that to be something that's not. They think it was a dark, evil period. Well, it was in a sense, but it really wasn't. From what I've seen, they called it the Dark Ages because it was kind of like media blackout. They tried to black out what was going on. And Christianity did flourish throughout Europe during that period, and they tried to cover it up. It's why they call it the Dark Ages. It's similar to media blackout. So... But
yeah,
I believe that to be true.
As you said, the further you go back, it does get more murky. I mean, even if you go back even like 200 or 300 years, you're having to dig deep,
Right.
But all right. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you were going to say something before we expanded.
Just trying to think where we were. Yeah, we were talking about. Well, you were talking about this the 14th Amendment and
the remedies. You really want to get into that? Yeah, well, it's technically expatriating, or they've changed the language during the past 150 years on that too, or 100 plus years. So right now it's, what I discovered that no one else touched upon, and it's something that Marx said in the Communist Manifesto. He said the communists are further reproached with desiring to abolish countries and nationality. So if you listen to these guys about no borders and stuff, that's right from that quote right there.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah, so they want to merge everyone. As you see, Germany's being destroyed by that lunatic woman. What's her name?
Angela Merkel.
Merkel, yeah.
That woman has almost single-handedly just wrecked Germany.
Yeah, just within years, So I said, last nails of the coffin are being driven in the last 30, 40 years.
Yeah, Tony Blair and Cameron and now May, they're all cut from the same cloth. They're treasonous whores in the pockets of this synagogue of Satan, working against the people. I mean, they have wrecked this country. There's an irrevocable demographic change here. There's so much tension. It's completely split down the middle. A society is unstable when you do a referendum whether they stay in something like the EU or not, and you have 50% of the population essentially saying yes, and the other 50% saying no. There's no agreement on anything. There's just so much division. It's to call it the United Kingdom, it's laughable. There's nothing united about it.
Well, one of their mottos is order out of chaos.
Yeah.
So that's the Synagogue of Satan's motto,
Yeah, they're total agents of chaos. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Sure. And the Luciferians, William Cooper covered that. He said, it's not the Jews, which I disagree with. They're the ones that push all these agendas forward, but that's why they came up with the Masonic orders and things to do their bidding, to march things forward, move things forward.
It's just a total global satanic criminal syndicate, really.
Right.
I've read a lot of Eustace Mullen's work. Are you familiar with Eustace Mullen's?
A little bit. I have just a belief that I don't trust anyone that misses what I've uncovered, because it really didn't take me long to uncover it. Mm. Let's dance around because they control us with law.
Yeah.
And this whole system, which I said I don't really have a problem with overall, it's a rebirthing of the Roman civil law system, or its principles. After 2,000 years, they just kind of rebirthed it, and.
Okay, so that's where we were. We're sort of homing in, focusing in on this, where this manipulation and this law aspect comes in, what they don't want you to know, what it should be, and what you're trying to achieve here with your work.
The system's good. There was one book I read that was given to me by. His story is interesting. He was member or a partner in a major stock firm in Chicago. And he became a Christian, and his other two partners kicked him out because he was talking Christianity in the office.
That'll do it, yeah.
Yeah, so he became very aware, and I went out to visit him back in 2000, I think it was. He gave me a book which added to my research knowledge or my understanding of what happened. But he gave me a copy of Soames, I think it's called Institutes of Roman Law, and the thing wasn't even opened. It came from I want to say a Catholic seminary or something up northern Wisconsin. The thing was, published in 1898 or something. It was written by a German law professor, and the pages weren't even cut apart. Publishing back then wasn't that good, so I had to cut the pages apart in the thing even. But I read that, and Soam mentioned it. German law professor again. He wrote this in the late 1800s. He said one thing that one of the major things that kind of put up a red flag to me is the Roman system, of course, was a republic before it turned into an empire. And he said the law of persons, which controls the world, the law of persons, it's private law, was amongst the people of Rome, and then the lawyers got put in place the corporate system, so corporations could be people or persons too. So they did the exact same thing with the United States with the 14th Amendment. That's what they did. They expanded. Not that corporations didn't exist to a point, but it just gave them vast powers. The same thing as when Rome went into empire mode. Basically, the United States was always technically an empire, in empire mode, but it expanded with the 14th Amendment even greater, because if you look at justices like on the Supreme Court, like Justice Black said, within the first 50 years, I think, of the 14th Amendment being put in place, only a minute fraction of cases involved black people, and that's what the political sales tool was, to sell the Civil War and the 14th Amendment was for the blacks. But he said most of them were for corporation benefits. And so the person law was definitely to build corporate powers, which is, everyone knows in this movement that's done any research or looked at anything knows that corporations are monsters and taking over everything.
Yeah, and in many ways, America was, it was just a continuation of the British Empire, really, because they certainly didn't really get free of the Bank of England, and that, and obviously then you get the Federal Reserve in there, and
Sure,
so, and then you've got the Frankfurt School, and you've got Freud come along. You mentioned Christianity there. I mean, these guys, Freud's on record, wanting to destroy Christianity. The Frankfurt School, Max Horkheimer, Paul Lazarsfeld, Leo Lowenthal, Erich Fromm, as I say, Freud, Wilhelm Reich, all these Jewish intellectuals at the Frankfurt School had the nation state and Christianity on its radar, as the number one goal for destruction.
Sure. Who was the guy that was Freud's nephew, the sales guy? He's engineered women smoking.
Oh, I know the guy, because I studied psychotherapy. You see, so I studied Freud's perverted BS. And actually, I think a lot of the theory of neurosis that he was studying, I actually think it's that is as a result of Jewish ethnocentrism. I think it comes from inbreeding in the Jews, that they produce so much neurosis in their own people, that got Freud on this sort of studying. But obviously, it was used for political purposes, and there was a much bigger agenda going on about that. But I know the guy you're talking about. I can't remember.
Benez or something like that. Bernays,
that's the guy. Yeah. But
so
Freud was a total pervert as well. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was a coke hound too.
Yeah.
Lots of cocaine.
Yeah, he fed his patients cocaine, and then of course you had Melanie Klein, which came along. She was another Jew, and this stuff was all very anti-Christian. It was all, it was very twisted, and it was very, it's just dark stuff, really, you know.
Yep.
But anyway,
they still believe this stuff today.
Well, yeah,
quote from I used it in that writing, Liberalism is Statism document.
Yeah, and it produces, again, just absolute chaos. I mean, they eventually, even the psychotherapeutic movement drop it, because when you have a declining society, and increased mental health problems, which involves mental institutions, benefits for sick people and stuff like that, the government starts to throw money at the problem, and they realize that psychoanalysis is not going to fix anything. So then the psychotherapeutic movement it dropped off, because they started focusing on things like cognitive behavioral therapy, which would be a lot more of the more scientific non-Jewish pioneers for actually producing results in behavior and improvements in behavior, rather than just this endless vortex of analysis that leaves people sort of usually more confused and more sick than they even were in the first place, you know?
Yep.
But anyway, sorry to digress.
No, it's not digression. Everything's on the table. And
yeah, these people are just everywhere. I mean, anywhere you look in positions of power and influence, there you will find them. It's just an obscenely overrepresentation by any standards. But when you consider how small a number they are, you know, comparatively to their numbers, it's just alarming. You know, just in banking and finance and media and academia, and just in psychoanalysis, all of it. You know.
Yeah. Proper
cancer, really.
Yeah. I've been taking an interest in these abandoned documentary type things that people on the YouTube are putting out lately. And there's quite a few on the mental institutions in the United States that used to be around. Just huge building or complexes of, that used to house mental patients, and they're all closed down now. It just, some guy mentioned in one of them that the states couldn't fund them anymore, is why they're not doing it anymore. And I guess they're just putting these people on drugs now and letting them into society. They think they have a handle on it, but they really don't.
Yeah,
it's just destroying people's lives.
Well, that's what they do. I mean, these people are satanically driven. I mean, they hate humanity.
Oh yeah. Unfortunately, it's hard to get along with humanity the way it doesn't want to know the truth. That's problems I've had over the years. That's
what the problem is. The West has abandoned truth. Again, this whole relativism stuff is a Jewish operation, where because they realize that truth is an enemy for them. So it's back to what Jesus said in John 8:44: "You're of your father the devil. You abode not in truth, because there's no truth in him." These people don't live in truth, so they need to get rid of truth. So relativism is how they do that. So I'm not male or female. I can be whatever I want to be.
Yeah,
it's
we're seeing that ridiculous.
Yeah,
over here in the States now. This non-gender crap. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, cultural relativism. It's just, man, it's such a sick and destructive ideology. But anyway.
Yeah. So you want to get to the remedy. Well, I basically went over it's expatriation or status correction, or nationality correction, as I call it. That's where we got rabbit trailed. I think I was bringing up that Marx quote of the Communist Manifesto, the destruction of nationalities and countries. And, if you go into law dictionaries pre-14th Amendment, each state was considered a country in the United States, but no one knows that anymore. So communism or Marxism has effectively destroyed the 50 states of the Union. The countries of the Union.
So each state should be independent, controlling its own laws, etc.
Yes, the Constitution and Articles of Confederation laid that out. It's just a contract between the states, or a compact, as they call it. The courts have called it a compact, which is in essence a contract agreement to work together under certain terms of international law.
Sure,
which,
yeah.
Have been around for thousands of years. They just, followed the rules that they've assembled.
Yeah, just to create a big federal government to widen their sphere of power. Yeah.
It's called Vattel, who I believe was a conspirator for the New World Order too. He kind of laid their blueprint out. He used like I said a minute ago, that he just used various forms of law that were around for thousands of years and other jurist principles that they've laid out centuries before too, or other guys that studied international law and just kind of assembled a manual for the law of nations. That's what he called it.
Yeah, over this side of the Atlantic, we call it the EU.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, it's the same concept. It removes the sovereignty of the nation state.
Yeah, like I said, they just put this overlay over all the countries in the world.
Yeah,
and that's what the statism is. Really, it's like I said, it wouldn't be bad if people know how it operated, and taxation is needed to have a country. I've written several papers on this and tied it down to mercantilism, like you noted. You mentioned that my papers kind of get down to the bottom of that's what it is. But that's why they don't want borders. These mercantilists don't want taxation between the countries, so they can have free reign over all commercial transactions or powers within all the countries,
and judicial matters as well, because we're in the EU. When you join the EU, you essentially give up about 90% of your own control of your own laws.
Yeah, sure, they have to control the law. I just wrote a short thing and put it on Facebook. Why Jews have to control the law? That's part of it. You hit on it. For these guys to operate the way they are through deception and erase the age-old laws that really governed nations, their imports and exports, that's where the country's revenue comes from. That's where it makes its money, and that's how it can survive and keep its people working. If they let other people into a country with their wares or their mercantilism, it's going to destroy their production.
Yeah,
and that's why they have to do away with the states or borders of countries and do away with nationalities, mix everything up, so everyone's just a human resource for these people who are controlling everything, and
just bring everybody under subjugation, basically.
Yes, exactly. It's feudalism. It's world feudalism.
Yeah, and this is what they teach them in the synagogues from when they're knee height, and it's just they teach them politics, right? Who wants to be a politician? Who's going to be a lawyer? Who's going to be a media personality? That's
all control.
Yeah, that's all they teach them. That's their religion, their race, and their power, basically.
Yes.
Because I remember I debated a young guy from Antifa, and he said he was an atheist, but he practices Judaism, and he goes to the synagogues.
Oh.
And someone said to him, and someone was confused. They said, "Hold on, this guy said he practices and he goes to the synagogues, but he also said he's an atheist." And I said, "You want to do more research, my friend, about who these people worship as God? It's not how you think."
Yeah, that gets back to what I said. If you're going to listen and parrot what other people are doing or saying, you're going to get in trouble. And that's why I was able to write my book and expose all this, because I did my own research. I stopped listening to people.
In the end, I think you have to, because unless you can really trust someone, at least. Once you learn to trust someone, you can at least trust that they're well-meaning anyway. But, I would always advise people to do their own research and to think things through, because there's such a glut of information out there as well. There's so much information to get through.
Yes.
It's hard to find people who are honest and, really competent. If you've got if you've got those two things in place, it's worth reading their work. But a lot of the time, they're either not competent, they're doing it for the money, and they're deliberately deceiving people for a buck, or else they're well-meaning, but they, for one reason or another, they're not competent or haven't put the hours into it or whatever.
Well, there's a lot. The internet's done nothing but to allow incompetent people or people with big mouths that shoot their, flap their jaws real good to get the platform.
That's it. For as much good as it's done, it's also muddied the waters a lot. I mean, they're not going to be short of people to focus who are just ridiculous to do little hit pieces on, and then brand all of this sort of conspiracy movement, with these types of people, just like crazy people, really.
Sure.
And then it's just to throw the baby out with the bathwater stuff.
Yeah, they peg people as sovereign citizens here, that anyone that doesn't want to follow the status quo program, they're a sovereign citizen.
Alex Jones is a bit of an idiot for that, because he comes out with some stuff just so he can get hits and stuff, and then it just makes everybody look bad.
No, he's a operative.
All right, we'll be back on the other side. Hi, and welcome back to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, with me, Paul Stevenson. I am with L.B Bork, and he is the founder of the People's Awareness Coalition. You back with me?
Yes, sir.
Have you got? Okay. Did you want to give out any of your details for funding, where people can support the work you're doing, or anything like that?
Yeah, I could do that. We're not set up on PayPal. We're without the United States, so we have real trouble getting.
You're not set up on PayPal.
We're working within the system. Yeah, we take donations that are sent to our address. It's been there for almost 20 years.
And do you want?
And that's it's PAC, P.A.C. P.O.B. 313, Keeler, Wisconsin, Kieler, Wisconsin 53818.
All right, great. And presumably that address is on your website as well, is it?
Yes, sir, on the contact page. Yeah.
All right, and where can people get your book, The Red Ammendment?
Similar place, the PAC Alliance. Let me go through PAC a little bit. PAC was established as People's Awareness Coalition in 1998. I established it to, if you know some of these people out there, it's always about them, Eustace Mullins or whatever. I started PAC to be, a group of people working together as corrected status people working, pre-14th Amendment principles and, having the proper nationality. And it never formulated to the point that it should have, because people are chicken for the most part, I think. And, we're the only ones. I predicted so many people would be going to prison, like Larkin Rose is one of them. I actually wrote a paper saying why I was wrong on his, he had a tax protest, position prior to him becoming an anarchist. That I wrote a paper on to debunk and say why I was wrong. He actually, one of my people that were following my work sent it to him, and he says, "Oh, he's just trying to confuse people." And I go, "Really?" About a year later, he's in jail. So
yeah, you mentioned Eustace Mullin there. I mean, he was hounded and hounded and hounded.
Yeah.
So was his family as well,
Yeah, I know. I just like I say, it's hard to believe that. I think his Ezra Pound, I think it was his mentor.
Yeah,
and he was on the Jews, of course, and the money, and that's another thing that I don't center on. It's not the money.
Yeah, well, he commissioned Eustace to go and do a study of the Federal Reserve from a nut house in Washington D.C., where he was held up in there for I think 14 years.
Ezra, right?
Yeah, Ezra Pound.
Yeah. But they stole our economies. That's the bottom line. If you don't have an economy of your home, that's how the things used to work. The farmers, the local people. Sure. That's the money's just a tool. So that's not the problem. The money is not the problem. So like I've been saying the whole show, if you're a parrot and you follow other people's ideas, you're going to fall for it and get caught in traps. Well, that's what everyone does. And I don't claim to know everything, but I did my own research and came to my own conclusions about things.
As one
By
should.
Observation, yes. So anyway, Eustace, I don't know. It didn't take me, half a year to figure out the 14th Amendment was the main problem with the United States. And of course, things just snowball after that,
And what exactly does the 14th Amendment say?
Well, it did what I said Soame talked about in his book, the corporations gaining power. And it basically, it says all persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. It created a dual citizenship, and that's just a Jew formula for manipulating countries and nationalities. And it also allows, if I'm sure you know that most of these Jews have dual citizenship. Their first primary allegiance is to Israel, right?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So they've done these things to meddle in other people's politics or other countries' politics.
Yeah, to be a legitimate fifth column.
Right. And it's all manipulation. It's all fraud. It's ridiculous that people even put up with it. Well, the 14th Amendment's just another stage or application of this dual citizenship that's allowed them. Yeah. It made people of the states have their primary allegiance to the United States. It's
the same thing with the EU again. You're a British citizen, but you're also a citizen of the EU.
Right. The 14. This idiot out there that everyone likes, Collins. What's his name? He's preaching world citizenship, and he's.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. He's an anti-Zionist guy, but
he's another operative.
Yeah, he's another citizen of nowhere.
He's a citizen of the world.
Are you talking about Ken O'Keefe?
Yes, Ken O'Keefe. Yeah, no, not O'Collins.
I think sometimes that they don't even have to be in on it. They just buy into it. They think it's a good thing because they end up hating the nation state because of, say, he hates America because of the wars. But and it's a sad thing because he does actually acknowledge that it's not really America. It's a bunch of Jews and the Zionists pulling the strings, controlling American foreign policy, which he appreciates. So again, I don't really understand where he's getting this sort of citizen of nowhere, global socialist nonsense from.
I don't know. He's got controllers because he's on Fox News. I can't even get on Alex Jones. They've got me blocked from him.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't want to anyway.
Huh?
You wouldn't want to anyway, mate.
Probably not.
Yeah, because it'd just be a hit piece. He had David Duke on there, and it was just,
he trashed Jones. So he woke people up, I believe.
Yeah.
See, David Duke's very articulate. He's very smart, educated. So.
Well, he was forced into a corner, really. Jones having bringing him on because if you keep ignoring people. Then the rumblings increase,
right?
So, and I don't know how. I mean, this is a tremendous frustration of mine. And you see these Cox sort of figures, these alt-right figures. Watson, of course, who's part of the Jones establishment there.
Yes.
Mike Cernovich, others. And it's difficult to figure out whether they're well-meaning and whether it's a tactical thing. But the JQ is so obvious. For anybody to not go there, it's just so disingenuous.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a shame because, well, you could bring an end to this stuff a lot quicker I think if you would actually go straight for the jugular with these people and expose them instead of just dealing with their tools all the time.
Right, exactly. Well, that brings me to I'm getting off track of what I was doing, but I can't remember where I was.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah,
no, it's not your fault. I was going to say that brings me to my next point.
You were talking about dual citizenship with the states and the federals.
Yeah. Well, as far as I'm concerned, the United States was the boilerplate or the model for the New World Order. Of course, the EU just took it over. The same path. So
yeah.
You guys just experienced what happened over here.
Yeah,
I said, like Marx said, all these principles are going to be applied in every country of the world. Mm. So It's done in different stages, progressively in different ways, and it's all done by law, and political moves like Merkel's destroying. They're infiltrating European countries with all these foreigners. It's just part of Marxism, part of the plot.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah.
So anyway, I was going to say that I got, you just mentioned it's hard to distinguish between an operative and an opportunist or whatever they call them.
Yeah, just somebody who's just an unwitting pawn,
Yeah, so, useful idiots, as the Russians used to call the people that move forward communism during the
useful idiots,
Bolshevik revolution.
Yeah.
So I just declared war on the movement. If you're not with PAC, you're with the New World Order, based on good and evil principles and default situation. Because we've been winning. They put taken people like David Champion, who's a tax guru, to court, and won't let him sell his book. I haven't been taken to court. We get money back from the IRS based on law and standing that we have. So, who's right here?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
So, guess what? I get to make the rules. So, well, actually, they made the rules because they declared war on us. We're just pointing out good and evil. If you think the New World Order is good, more power to you. Stay with it.
Yeah.
So there's two sides here, good and evil. That's all there is to it. So.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the US and when you look at what's happening in the UK and Europe, I mean, you've literally, again, you've almost got a 50-50 type split in America. Voting for Clinton and then.
Yeah, I think less than half the people in America voted this last election.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is there seems to be such a sort of a polarity now. And it seems that this New World Order idea, this communist cultural Marxism, this global socialism stuff, it appeals to a certain, about half the population.
Well, sure it does, because they're poor.
Yeah, and it seems to, the brainwashing seems to be go ahead with about half the population, and then the other half of the population seem to see it for what it is and know instinctively that it needs to be pushed back on,
Yeah. Well, for example, the way the Indian tribes used to work in America, they all worked together. They didn't have poor and rich. Some people would call that communism or socialism in itself. Well, no, it wasn't. It was community or tribalism. They just worked together. They loved each other and took care of each other.
Well, that's how the church Jesus Christ set up is supposed to operate.
Right. So you either got that or you got division.
Yeah.
Of classes.
That does rely on a tremendous amount of love for your fellow man, though.
Mm-hmm.
For that to work, because in reality, you just have a bunch of squabbling tribes more often than not, really.
Sure, exactly. And again, you mentioned it, Paul, that these guys instigate things. They create problems. All these anarchists say, well, we don't need laws. We can get along. Well, maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. But we don't know, because these people have messed around with us for so long. We don't know if we can all get along.
Well, yeah, again, the Jews just, they've got all sorts of ideologies coming out. And, again, the Frankfurt School and what was going on there, it really satisfied the Jewish appetite, to spray the culture with ideas. And none of them, of course, will be good for society and predominantly, propaganda. But it gets people squabbling among themselves. And, and all these ideas, rather than, anything based in truth or reality, are more often than not devoid of sort of any scientific data or the rigors of testing that you might expect from sort of so-called academics. But alas, it's just an onslaught of theories and ideas, and some will go for that and some will go for that. And then they just have, divide and conquer. Unity is to be despised by this clique,
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing I realized when I started studying these issues, I had my head in the sand. I said I couched all these problems when I was in my 20s and half my 30s. It was my mid-30s when I started looking at things really deeply. That if you're not if you have a marriage, if you're not on the same spiritual and political plane, you're not going to make it. Makes
with your wife or your partner, you mean?
Right.
Yeah,
right.
Of course. Yeah, it's not going to work.
So I realized this in the 90s. In way into my 30s when I started researching. I said, everyone basically is living a lie in America that are married, because every time I reach out to people that want to, either spouse, I'm not going to pick on men or women. There's usually one of them that doesn't want to join the other.
Yeah.
In freedom or being out from the satanic or system.
Well, again, that's why they brought in feminism and there's such an attack on the family, because before, up until, well, not that long ago, you had the head of the household voting for the family, which you would expect, instead of having your wife voting for Clinton and you're voting for Donald Trump, how's there supposed to be any harmony in that home? Right.
That's what I'm saying.
Exactly.
Right. So
yeah.
It's a mess.
Yeah, they know what they're doing. I mean, they know how it's just Kevin McDonald wrote the book, The Culture of Critique. If you look at the leftist establishment and this whole political correct thing, what do they even stand for? They're just always on the attack. They just want to destroy everything. They want to destroy the family. They want to destroy the patriarchy. They want to destroy the religion, the church. They want to destroy all the institutions. They want to pull down the statues. They're just a wrecking ball. They don't stand for anything. It's just attack, attack, attack. You're a racist. You're a xenophobe. You're a Islamophobe. That's it. They don't actually have anything that they themselves really stand for, and they can't argue that they stand for tolerance, because they're always calling us bigots. But as soon as you disagree with them, you'll find out how tolerant they are.
Yep. Well, it comes right out of the Communist Manifesto.
It does, exactly.
Yeah. I read that, and I was flabbergasted that people, were taught, in college and high school to read this thing. And it stood out like just a sore thumb to me what they were doing with this thing.
Yeah.
And
pure Marxism, and it's just cultural Marxism. Yeah.
There is a quote I want to read that I've been using quite a bit. I actually didn't even use it in my book, I don't think. But it just plays, says what they're doing. Okay, here it is. It's from Communist Manifesto of 1848. There are, besides eternal truths such as freedom, justice, etc., that are common to all states of society. But communism abolishes eternal truths. It abolishes all religion and all morality instead of constituting them on a new basis. It therefore acts in contradiction to all past experience. There it is right there. They're flipping things on its head.
That's it. That's what they do. It's just a case of tearing everything down that stood before and questioning.
Yeah. Everything upside down. Black is white, white is black. White is black.
Yeah,
that's not racial. It's just a color expression.
Yeah, you can see it in the protocols.
Racial. Which they say were debunked, which I say bullshit.
Well, of course they'd say it's debunked. I'll tell you, as Ford himself said, if they were indeed, a forgery, which indeed a forgery suggested they were taken from something that actually existed. He said they
yeah, exactly. Good for you.
But he said they fit, and and you're thinking, okay, whoever wrote these. If it was nonsense and it was as if someone made these up, they must have been had some uncanny ability to tell and to predict how the 20th century was going to pan out.
Sure, exactly, and then there you go with timelines again. I don't care if someone manufactured that; it's happened.
Exactly,
it's looking like it. Today looks like the things perfectly.
Yeah, they've pretty much.
Who cares if it's a forgery, quote unquote? Who cares? It's real. It happened.
Yeah, it's depressingly accurate.
Yep.
These
guys trying to nitpick all these little details.
The depressing thing is that it's hard enough dealing with the Jews themselves shouting you down and calling you a racist and anti-Semite and everything else. But when you have to then stomach and tolerate their Gentile apologists as if they need any more. And not only do they not call them out themselves, but then they join in on the bandwagon and call you a racist and call you an anti-Semite and call you a conspiracy theorist and everything else. It's very, very tragic. You're thinking, I'm trying to help you, mate. Don't you care about the future of your children, or do you want them to live in a Bolshevik hellhole?
Yeah. Yeah, history repeats itself.
Do you want your grandchildren to spend their life in the gulag?
Yeah, speaking of grandchildren, my grandmother told me at age 6, don't ever trust a Jew.
I mean, unfortunately, I don't think you can. You have to sort of, if you have any sense, you must just be on guard by these people.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't. Again, I shelved it and didn't pay enough attention to it.
The fourth protocol is for this reason that we must undermine faith, eradicate from the minds of the Gentiles the very principles of God and soul, and replace these conceptions by mathematical calculations and material desires. And you look at the West today and its material obsession. People are so empty. This is why Islam's filling a void today, because people, there's only so much stuff you can buy.
Mm-hmm.
You know? How many houses do you need? How many cars do you need?
True.
It's just emptiness, and they know that that fourth protocol. It predicts the spiritual condition of the 20th century, particularly the later stages of it of the 20th century, and right now, of course,
Yeah, it's a disease that's affected Americans. I've laid out some of my beliefs, or what would be equitable for, like, Americans, for example, in a reconstituted, or new constitution arrangement for the states. And they go, well, I don't like that. And I go, well, you're greedy.
Yeah.
You found the typical problem that America has.
And that is why, and that condition has allowed, this insidious, treasonous selling out of the country because of money, basically. We'll bribe you and you'll get a career progression, you get some prestige. There's no principles in our so-called leaders. They've literally sold out the country. And, for money and prestige and career progression, and, just taking bribes. They don't stand for anything. You give them money and that's it. And by the way, if you look at Merkel, can't have children, not having children. She's not invested in the future of what her children are going to suffer. Theresa May is not going to have children. She can't have children.
She can, or Merkel can, or she decided not to?
I think Merkel's a lesbian. I think probably Theresa May, God knows what she is, but she can't have children either. And it seems to be a lot of these political leaders, and these women are not having children. So they don't have to worry about the future of their children because they don't have any. I don't think that's by accident.
Mm-hmm. Well, they were groomed just like Clintons were here.
Yeah.
They're all chosen and put in position so they can screw things up.
Yeah.
With the Marxist agenda.
Yeah, and there are springing up. You see, there's such a stigma, of course, attached to calling out the Jewish stuff that there's a new group over here called Generation Identity, and it's refreshing to see them. They're young, dynamic, they're organized, but they're distancing themselves. I saw an interview with one of them, and they said, "We don't allow anybody to join who discusses the Jewish issue." And I'm thinking, unfortunately for them, I think there's a certain amount of youthful hubris going on because they are ostracizing themselves, and they've also disavowed the alt-right. So they are now putting themselves in a situation. What do they think? Do they really believe that they're not going to be called anti-Semites, white supremacists, because they say that we disavow? I mean, they're going to get the same treatment. They're going to be dismissed as the same anti-Semites, racist, Nazis. And then they expect that the alt-right community and those who are talking with the JQ are going to be friendly towards them when they've come out with that statement, distancing themselves from anyone talking about the JQ.
I was starting to explain PAC, and we got rabbit trailed. Not your fault, Paul. I'm not going to blame you. It's my fault.
Bring me back. You're quite right.
No, I was talking about PAC was assembled for. A number of people to work together as lawful nationals of the states, and it hasn't transpired because of all the problems we've been talking about, majorly just the one you were just mentioning about being pegged this or that. There's bad stuff about People's Awareness Coalition or PAC on the web, which is just all nonsense. That's another problem people have. Go to the horse's mouth. Don't listen to gossip.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll pick this up after the break.
Okay. Hi, and welcome back to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I'm Paul Stevenson, your host. and I'll be with you for the next half hour. That's through till 9 p.m. here in the UK, where I am, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm with Mr. L.B. Bork, who's the founder of the People's Awareness Coalition, or PAC, and the author of the book, The Red Amendment. Mr. Bork, I'm going to give you the or Mr. Bork, I should say, give you the.
They don't call me a Borg. That's a Jewish moneylender. That last name is actually meaning a Jewish moneylender.
Oh, right, Bork, yeah.
Borg, yeah. That's why Star Trek, the Enterprise, their Enterprise, get it?
Right.
They said, don't, the resistance is futile. You can't resist the Borg.
Right.
The Jewish moneylender.
Indeed.
These guys are so crafty, aren't they?
Well, yeah. Well, as you know, they're parasitic, aren't they?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They're parasites. Yep.
Yeah. So.
Anyway, you were saying that I guess the next 20 minutes are mine.
Yeah, I'll give you the floor, just so you can get as much out as you want to.
Okay.
I'll digress.
We were talking about PAC and its makeup and how it works before the end of the hour. But I wanted to say you guys have Joseph Atwell on now. That's just great.
Who, sorry?
Joseph Atwell. He's a I don't know, extremist in regards to Jesus didn't exist. And I don't like the guy.
No, I don't like anybody coming out with that, because it's just nonsense. And
it is, but he's on Revolution Radio.
There are, well, I shouldn't say anything. I'll let you.
But let's just leave it go at that.
I'll zip it.
Yeah, me too. Sorry I brought it up, I guess.
Go for it.
I just don't know when to shut up sometimes.
No.
And during the ads, I noticed the off-grid thing. That's what PAC is probably pushing, the most important off-grid thing there is. These off-gridders aren't looking at the being off the law grid. Mm. So they're getting harassed left and right, or it will come. That day will come when they are. Mm. So the PAC is the foundation of everything, because what they do is through law, and law is unfortunately the foundation for everything that they built on. And that's why I being pragmatic in the way I look at things, you have to look at things to see if it's going to work. Well, these guys design the calendars, they design the times, the timelines, everything. So you got to work within what they've constructed. And again, I'm not going to say that I agree with all of it, but some of it would work. The problem is people don't know it, and the problem is they've kept it from us. It's kind of a forbidden knowledge or a hidden knowledge.
Again, it's like Judaism, because if you look at it, it's exactly what you'd expect. Because if you look at Judaism, when they say, Moses and the law, people think of the Ten Commandments, but the law is full of just like all these just like endless little laws and qualifiers, and they were always trying to catch Jesus out with this stuff. Jesus was actually a very good lawyer. Mm-hmm. Because they never could catch him out, because he always knew what they were trying to do. So they very much, they always want a monopoly on law, and that's why so many of them are lawyers. I mean, they're just lawyers. There's so many Jews who are lawyers,
Oh, sure, and doctors. It's where they just connive and take people's money, and it's just sad. But anyway, back to PAC. The Coalition, PAC, People's Awareness Coalition, was supposed to be made up of, and it is, there's a few of us. I thought it snowballed, but after about 10 years, I was finding people were distracted with getting free money from these other, opportunists and operatives that are out there, that they got all distracted with that. So, and then a lot of them are just afraid. So we created the PAC Alliance about 10 years ago, and that's to give the chance for people that want to help us and join in and get the word out, but not correct their status quite yet. So PAC Alliance is the main, foundation of PAC right now. It's not the real foundation, but it's the average foundation where people can donate and get involved and spread the word, and so we can start taking our countries back from these people. So we have the proper foundations in international law, because everything they've done is under private law, and it's unlawful. There's no way to get around that. That's why they have to undermine what we're talking about. Of course, PACs, I talked about having a mission statement, so they can't really do anything to you. The mission statement briefly says we're here to get the states back and the sovereignty back of the states that was stolen with the 14th Amendment, and have people act lawfully, and talk about wars being the worst thing that could happen. I'm paraphrasing what the mission statement says. But it's all peaceful. And one thing I've noticed that these guys that put all this together, they can create death and war, but we can't, because they'll come after us. So it's all about education and having people have the proper foundations of law to understand what they can do to save themselves from this evil that's been thrust upon us.
And the sad thing is, though, as I mentioned to you earlier, it doesn't seem to matter, though, does it? What your mission statement is or how peaceful you are. They come at you with the full might of the media and everything else that they have to brand you all the nasty, stigmatized terms, and so in the end you start thinking, well, it's like getting punched in the face, and you say, what'd you do that for? Well, because I thought you might hit me, so I thought I'd get the retaliation in first, and afterwards you think, well, I may as well have hit you because you've just hit me back.
Yeah. Well, that's why there's power in numbers, and that's another reason I declared war on the movement. I'm just after, PAC being around a good 10, 12 years and being in the movement at least 6 years prior to the forming of PAC. I said, I'm done with this. And then not to mention that, looking at 2,000 or plus years or whatever of people being divided based on, well, I like the Bible and I like being a Christian, but I don't like what this church is doing here. So I'm going to start our own. Because no one can agree on anything. Well, it boils down to good and evil at this point.
You get about 20,000 denominations.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So not only is this declaration of war built on, it's kind of a countermeasure based on what these people have done to us. And it's also a legal notice that these people that don't join us are responsible for all the death, destruction, and debt that it continues to make on everyone, or impose on everyone. It's really a legal notice that guess what? You're going to be responsible for all this stuff that keeps going on and on. Mm. So there's no argument there. There's no logical argument to that stance. So it's declared, and that's the way it is. No one's been ever able to counteract it or come against it. Just like anything in my book, you have these idiots say, "Oh, Bork's wrong." Wrong on what? What are you talking about? Anyone can throw a blanket statement out without explaining themselves. I've written a 18-page treatise on why it's a crime to vote and how Section 2 of the 14th Amendment works. No one's come even close to debunking it whatsoever. People are rebelling against the Constitution by voting. And the people, per Section 1, as we talked about, they created the dual citizenship, and if you don't do anything about it, you're the driver in the car robbing the bank. Mm. So what we do is get out of that and get on the other side of the Constitution, or the right side of the Constitution.
Right.
They'll say constitutional law. Well, 14th Amendment's part of Constitution. What Constitution are you talking about? Pre or post 14th Amendment? Oh, they use all these tricks and word games. And if you don't know how to not manipulate, but articulate things properly, they're going to run right over you. And that's what they've done with the internet. They just put out a bunch of crap, and these parrots are opportunists. Repeat it. It's like a snowball going downhill. And the general theory or belief is, oh, PAC's the only one talking about this. They can't be right. There's 10 other guys on YouTube saying this. Mm. So that's stupid.
Well, again, the internet,
because people don't think.
It's an information glut, you see. So, and also the internet itself can reduce people's concentration spans down to very low. So it becomes they go into one thing and then another and then another, and then they just end up. It's just a chaotic pool and cesspool of knowledge and then just of confusion.
Yep. I got memes that deal with all these issues. Yeah. I mean, you're right. I'm impressed that you're bringing them up.
That's why it's
because you see them.
Yeah, because it's damaging, and it can be very well. And it's just it leaves people so vulnerable to disinformation and to be shepherded in one direction and then shepherded in another. And all you really need for that really is to have some charismatic type personality.
That's the way it works. The demagogue.
Yeah, and the Jews have always worked like that. I mean, you look at some of the the way they people like Freud, Einstein. These guys were idiots, and just purely by the muscle and the might of the media machine, and through the power of repetition, they get to establish these people as geniuses and their theories as apparently factual, and they know what repetition does.
Oh yeah. It just brainwashes people.
Yeah, and as I say, they just say something often enough, and for the majority of people, that's enough to establish it as reality.
Right. Exactly. Anyway, we're looking for more people to join us because what we do is lawful, and like I said, we win. We put them in their place, and it's fun actually.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Anything, when you've got truth on your side, you can soldier on,
Yep, exactly. Yeah, I've been at this 25 years now, and I knew that until this was fixed, it was worthless to start a business or do any other thing because they're just going to take it from you. You're gonna go down with the sinking ship,
Yeah, and again, you see, you're still fortunate in America that you at least have the First Amendment, although it's increasingly the case that you have the First Amendment with consequences.
Yeah.
Whereas over here now, we don't really have that. I mean, there's just recently, Amber Rudd brought out a law basically saying that you can get up to 15 years in prison for watching far-right propaganda material, like watching videos, and it was sandwiched right in between jihadi websites and bomb-making websites. So then they threw in far-right propaganda in between that. So it's obviously very ambiguous, and you know that really in this country you do not have free speech, I get increasingly nervous because when you're actually doing this work, you think, well, the more people I can reach and the more influential you are, the better. But equally, you think on another level, you think you just know you're heading straight along into a shitstorm, which might well end up in a lot of court appearances and possibly a prison sentence.
Yes,
and
that's why we stay away from those controversial issues. When I got into this so-called movement, I call it a constipation because it's really full of shit and going nowhere. Back in the 90s, it was part of two groups, actually, a constitutional group that we got infiltrated. And
how do you mean you stay away from the controversial issues? Because the issues that we're discussing are, of course, controversial.
They're controversial. I'm talking about bomb making and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. They just used that as a way of throwing some legitimate, dangerous stuff in there,
Of course, they tried to lump us in the sovereign citizen category, but we're not. We're lawful nationals.
Heretics.
Whatever.
Well, that's what we are. We're heretics.
Yeah, technically, but I don't appreciate that language either.
But you know what I mean. Though I'm using that analogy because we're under a sort of this is a religious type, oppressive type system.
Oh, it's yeah.
And any dissenters are treated like heretics, and if they could take you down to the village and burn you at the stake, they would. But instead, they have to drag you through the courts, ruin your income, you ruin your relationships, and
yeah, that's the modern day, the way they do it. Yes,
exactly that.
But anyway, in this group in Phoenix, they sent in 2 FBI agents, and they were touting, well, we need to blow up buildings and stuff. And they go, no, we don't. Well, anyway, the guy that ran the organization had access to police files and found out they're FBI agents. In case, of course, we got rid of them. But that's how they do. They set people up.
Of course, yeah.
It's instigation, and I think it's evil, and that's how they operate.
Yeah, and I don't know anybody in the alt-right movement, that I've ever interviewed or anything I've ever said or any of those groups that have ever called for any kind of violence.
Right.
But yet,
well, we're peaceful. That's why I say our mission statement basically says that in so many words.
Exactly. But they try and portray any resistors as if that they are the same as jihadi bomb makers, jihadi websites and bomb making websites. Because as I say, that was sandwiched in between those two, far right propaganda, and you can get 15 years in prison for watching this sort of material online. So that's how they frame it. Even though you're being peaceful, they're putting you in a category where you're apparently as bad as someone watching bomb making websites,
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, again, this is why it's so important to know the law, because you need to know your rights and how they're going to set you up with all this stuff.
Exactly, and that's why the dual system is such a danger to people. Like I was saying before, that I have constitutional rights. Well, on what side? Who are you? It's created this problem of duality, and I think Paul has been a biblical kind of guy that the devil loves gray area.
Oh yeah,
that's where he or the principle of Satan flourishes.
Yeah, he's an agent of chaos and confusion.
Chaos, yes, you said that earlier. So that's what the 14th Amendment did. It caused chaos because they didn't go in and start a whole new constitutional system. They created what I call a communist or Marxist association that you could belong to if you want to, but you don't have to. And the problem is most people don't understand they don't have to. And like you related earlier, that to this point, we're looking at 150 years later, they've got people 50-50 now on it. Yeah. So which side is right? And that's the problem. That's the problem.
This is why it's a very pivotal point in history, really, of the West and your nation and the European nations. And I actually think they're going to fail because they're pushing so hard that even reasonable people now are just thinking, what the? I think they're going to implode because they're just a mad dog. They don't know anything else but just to attack.
Right. No, I think they're running scared in a sense.
This is why
that's why we have to unify and get our act together.
Yeah, this is also why the Jews have been expelled from every country they've ever been in, because for the sake of politeness eventually gives way to the survival instinct, and the Jews and this Jewish clique that we're talking about. And I spoke to, when we were talking about the traits, I spoke to Kevin McDonald about this. Their aggression outweighs even their IQ and their intelligence. They just don't know when to stop, and that is their weakness. Mm-hmm. Because no amount of control is ever enough for them.
Yeah, it's a sickness.
It is. They just keep coming. And eventually, as I say, there's only one thing you can do with a mad dog, Put it down. Exactly. I'll probably be arrested at about 11 o'clock for saying that.
Oh well.
But anyway,
we'll get a habeas corpus.
I hate this country, man. Sooner I can get out of here. I am going to get out of here. I would much rather be doing this show and doing what I do from the US. At least there's some protection. There's a bigger place. It's there's more opportunity for anonymity.
Well, US was built on people of your nature. I came from Germany. My people did. But
yeah, I'm Anglo-Irish stock. Yeah, I'm Anglo-Irish stock the whole way. My mom's English, and my dad's Irish, and my grandfather's British or English, and me. So
the Irish really didn't start coming over till the 14th Amendment period. They weren't liked here because they're Catholics.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's the history shows that too. The Jesuit schools, there was only a couple in place prior to the Civil War, and afterwards there's almost 50 now. So that's just another Jew operation.
Well, the Jesuits.
The Jesuits.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They infiltrated the church. I believe they created the church but they fully took it over when the Jesuits came in. They weren't going fast enough for them. Right. Because just like at their constitutional convention, most of them were agents, like Alexander Hamilton, whose mother was a Jew. All these were New World Order agents, but there were some good people too, you know, just like the Council of Nicaea, they were probably good people.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
they're agents too. They're always there. Yeah. You don't know who they are, but there's always good people too. So
yeah, but it's like there's a lot of leaven in there.
Yeah,
you know, if you look, you know, Jesus warned about the leaven of the Pharisees. Mm-hmm. You know, but anyway, we'll wrap up because I think this show's going to be over in a couple of minutes. But
okay, yeah, PAC Alliance, P.A.C. ALLIANCE.US. PAC Alliance US, and we're the only lawful political action committee. Everyone says that acronym confuses people.
Sure, and I'll mention you to. I'll mention you. I'm doing an interview with, as I say, I'm going on his show at Renegade Radio. I'll put your information forward to him as well. Perhaps,
I appreciate it.
Perhaps he can get you on there as well. You know.
Yeah, the Red Ammendment is an eye opener. It just needs to be read by everyone.
All right, good to speak to you. Take care.
Thanks for having me on, Paul.
You're welcome.
Great show. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.